Couple of new War of the Spark commanders. God Eternal Kefnet versus Niv-Mizzet Reborn. Now that's a pretty slow start. We'll just have to hope that our opponent gets into just as slow a start. Yeah, we could go Fabricate into some kind of ramp, so we'll keep that. We're on the draw at least. Good to see a tap land coming down from our opponent. We draw into an island, so we've got mana to play for the next 3 turns. Niv-Mizzet Reborn is a 5-mana Wooburg commander, a 6/6 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, reveal the top 10 cards of your library, and for each colour pair, choose a card that's exactly those colours from among them, and put them into your hand. The rest go on the bottom in a random order. Let's see if they want to play around counter magic. We do have a Force of Will, but I doubt we're going to be using it this early in the game. Not going to F6 because I want to pause on whatever our opponent casts. Make them think that we might be considering counter magic. But it looks like they're just slow rolling their way up to Wooburg. Niv-Mizzet Reborn is unlike Kozilek, the Great Distortion. It has to enter in order to get the ability to go off, so if we can counter it, we can keep that from happening. Do we want Rhystic Study or Fabricate? I think Rhystic Study for now. God Eternal Kefnet is a 4/5 flying zombie god for 4 mana. You may reveal the first card you draw on each turn as you draw it, and whenever you reveal an instant or sorcery this way, copy it, and it costs 2 generic less to cast the copy. Still not going for anything, so we will just keep going for as long as we can with this. Let's go Fabricate into a Sol Ring, I think. And that way we can hopefully go for God Eternal Kefnet and still hold up counter magic if we actually manage to draw into any. Well, they don't have any blue mana, but they will get blue mana from that Gilded Lotus. We'll say yes to the Rhystic Study. We draw an island. And yeah, I think we'll give them the Gilded Lotus. And there's a Lightning Greaves. They'll probably pay for the Rhystic Study with Lightning Greaves. So we're definitely at a point where we want to be countering the Niv-Mizzet Reborn. I think it's time to get down our God Eternal Kefnet. We can draw a card on our opponent's turn and trigger God Eternal Kefnet, assuming that we reveal an instant or sorcery there. Compulsive Research will allow us to draw 3. But we won't have the mana left open to actually cast the copy, so I'm not sure we're actually going to go for that. Now, Kiora's follower will be able to have Haste and Shroud, and it will also, therefore, be able to untap the Gilded Lotus. And there's a Tome of the Guild Pact. That is, whenever you cast a multicoloured spell, you draw a card. You can also add 1 mana of any colour with that. We draw into a Consecrated Sphinx, so we will not reveal that because it is not an instant or sorcery. No upside to us revealing that. Oh, and Compulsive Research actually isn't the card I thought it was. We can't do that on our opponent's turn because it's a sorcery anyway. Bribery, I think we will definitely reveal that. I don't mind a 3 mana Bribery. There's a Sakama. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, it untaps a load of stuff. Oh, there's Angel of Despair, Duplicant, Gisela, Hellkite Tyrant, Hostage Taker, Miss Meadow Witch, Prime Speaker. I think a Rashmi might actually be pretty good. How's about a Steel Hellkite, actually? Because we can put 2 into that and get rid of the Kiora's follower and the Lightning Greaves. And then we'll go for Bribery again, and I quite like taking the Progenitor Mimic away from our opponent. Let's have the Progenitor Mimic come down as a copy of Steel Hellkite. And then we swing in with God Eternal Kefnet, get 4 damage on our opponent, and we're just holding up the Force of Will. We're 1 mana away from a Rite of Replication as well, kicked, so that will create 5 token copies of a creature. We'll get another copy of the Steel Hellkite next turn, so that's 15 damage just from Steel Hellkites coming across to our opponent. Our opponent's got Wooburg set up, so they could go for their Niv-Mizzet if they wanted to. And I think I'm going to let it hit the battlefield here. We're not going to reveal the scroll rack. Yeah, I don't want my opponent to scoop, and I also... Yeah, I think that we can deal with anything that they get down here with a washout. Return all permanents of a colour of our choice to its owner's hand. We can name green to get rid of these two things. Our opponent's gotten a bunch of stuff there. There's a couple... Oh, actually, no. They haven't gotten a bunch of stuff at all. There's a couple of Rakdos things for them to choose from. There's Angrath and Dreadbore. And they could actually cast the Dreadbore, couldn't they? And then there's Prime Speaker Zagana and Rashmi to choose from. Yep, they're going for that Dreadbore. We are getting a lot of card draw from this Rhystic Study. Okay, they're going after the Steel Hellkite, so I'm actually going to allow that. And then they can untap the Gilded Lotus with the Kiora's Follower and generate 5 mana. There's a Venser, the Sojourner. Definitely going to draw another card from Rhystic Study. Okay, so what we could do is name white with washout, swing in with Steel Hellkite and pay 2 to get rid of the Greaves and the Kiora's Follower. Let's allow our opponent to flicker their Niv-Mizzet. That's no doubt what they're going for. Yep, exile a permanent you own and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It has entered the exile zone, so our opponent correctly chose to exile it and not send it back to the command zone. And then Niv-Mizzet re-enters, and they'll get a bunch more cards in hand. So they've got a Hostage Taker that can get rid of our Kefnet. There's a Teferi, a Vindicate. Anguished Unmaking is probably the Orzhov card they took. Yeah, Anguished Unmaking I would have thought. They don't get to keep Obnick's List Reignited because that's a mono-coloured Planeswalker. And here we go, gonna get a copy of the Steel Hellkite. We will not reveal the island, but we will play it. And then why don't we say washout for white. That will bounce the Planeswalker and Niv-Mizzet. And then we can swing in at our opponent with these two things. And we're going to put 2 mana into the Steel Hellkite, which will blow up those 2 mana permanents our opponent controls. And then I think we can go for a scroll rack as well. We've got Force of Will held up. I think I will Force of Will the Niv-Mizzet if that comes down again. I've only just noticed actually we've got lethal on our opponent next turn if they don't do something about at least one of our creatures. Our opponent deciding not to pay for the Rhystic Study. Luckily for them, we haven't left up any mana to copy an Impulse. Now then, Hostage Taker exiles something, doesn't it? Do we care about God Eternal Kefnet being exiled? Let's allow it down because I think we're going to see another Niv-Mizzet cast. If they go for God Eternal Kefnet, I am actually going to make use of the second ability. When it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library, third from the top. But no, they're just going after the Progenitor Mimic copy of Steel Hellkite. Okay, and there's a Vindicate. Now, do we want... They might have a Terminate or something like that for God Eternal Kefnet. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for a Force of Will on that, and we will get rid of Supreme Will. They might have another removal spell, but I'd rather get it out of their hand. Yeah, they did have a Terminate, so we'll just go for Scroll Rack here. And I think we can put... Yeah, I think we can put everything on top, actually. We'll go Impulse and Compulsive Research. And then Consecrated Sphinx. Nazal, Rite of Replication, and I want to reveal the Mystic Confluence at the beginning of my next turn. That will only cost 3 for a copy of that, thanks to the God Eternal Kefnet. And I actually liked our previous hand better than this, but not to worry. As long as we don't shuffle the library, we can draw into that stuff again. We will definitely reveal the Mystic Confluence. We get to cast that, a copy of that, and it will only cost us 3 mana. I think we just draw 3 cards here. We don't want to give our opponent a hostage taker. Yeah, we don't want to bounce our opponent's hostage taker because they'll get back the Progenitor Mimic, and that could come down as a copy of anything, really. Let's get down the Sky Diamond. We'll swing him for 4. And I think we can just see what our opponent does here. Get rid of Thirst for Knowledge, and a Trinket Mage we'll get rid of as well, I think. I may go for the High Tide with Mystical Tutor at the end of the turn so that we can try and get down Nazal and Consecrated Sphinx. Let's go for Mystical Tutor now, actually. In response to that Rhystic Study, it will either discourage them from letting us draw with Rhystic Study because we're going to get a mana drain, or they'll allow us to draw with it and we get a mana drain. Yep, they're putting the mana into it, so that was a good deterrent. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. And if they want to get into Niv-Mizzet now, nope, they're just going for Decimate. They want to put a mana into Rhystic Study so that we don't draw into the counterspell. Let's see if they give it to us. We do have Scroll Rack, so we can... Yep, they're tapping out for that. And Decimate is going to get rid of a lot of stuff here, so let's go for the Scroll Rack activation. And we can swap the Mystic Confluence. In fact, not Mystic Confluence. Let's put Rite of Replication up. And we'll swap that with the Mana Drain that's on top of our library. And then Mana Drain can go for the Decimate, and that will counter that and give us 4 mana to play with next turn. And now we're going to reveal a Rite of Replication, and that will allow us to get a copy of that Rashmi Eternity's Crafter for only 2 mana. Rashmi is legendary, so there's no point in paying the kicker cost for the Rite of Replication. I'm going to go for Snapcaster Mage here. Onto the Mystical Tutor, because I want a High Tide. Don't think I'm going to make use of it this turn. What have we got here? Yeah, we'll just allow our opponent to do something next turn, because we don't have any counter magic held up. But we've got some good permanents in play. They're down to 6, so they're definitely on the back foot. They might have some kind of board wipe. There's a few multicoloured board wipes that they could have in hand. And they've drawn plenty of cards with the Tome of the Guild Pact. This deck isn't really built around countering everything because we don't want to be revealing counters constantly with God Eternal Kefnet. Modal counter spells like Mystic Confluence and Cryptic Command are good, but we don't want to reveal counter spells like Mana Drain all the time because they're not really any good to copy. Our opponent's Rashmi is going to reveal a card here, and because our opponent cast a non-creature spell, we are going to draw a card from Nazal. We are not going to copy the High Tide, are we? Well, we might as well reveal it. They know we have the High Tide anyway, so there's no harm in revealing it. And that way, Rashmi can give us a card draw. We get into an Echoing Truth off of that. Let's see if they want to give us card draw with the Rhystic Study. Okay, and our opponent gets into a Sol Ring with Mirari's Wake. So that's just more mana for them. Rashmi does have them copy it though. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, with CMC less than that spells, then you can play it without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, put it into your hand. But Soul Ring is a non-creature spell, so we're going to get a Curse of the Swine. That's good to put on top with Scroll Rack. Yeah, that will only cost us 2 blue mana to exile these two things. And deciding to pay for the Rhystic Study that time. And now that our hand has been filled up again, this will be a good Scroll Rack if we want to try and get into a good free counter spell like a foil. We've already used the Force of Will. I don't think we have Pact of Negation in here, actually. And I'm almost certain we don't have Daze. Oh, there's Sakama, Primal Calamity. Do you want to let us draw again? Okay, in that case, we have the extra mana thanks to the previous High Tide to go for Scroll Rack. I'm going to keep that Rapid Hybridization in our hand. And let's go for everything here. Everything except High Tide, actually, now that I think about it. And we'll put Curse of the Swine on top so that we can get a copy of that next turn. And we did not get into any free counter magic, unfortunately, so we will just have to allow that to hit the field. And then we will Rapid Hybridization the Zakama, because, yeah, that can destroy artifacts and enchantments. So before Zakama untaps all the lands, we're going to blow that up. And now we can F6 at least. The Progenitor Mimic is coming down. I thought that got exiled under the Hostage Taker. We took that with Bribery, and it got exiled with our opponent's Hostage Taker. Maybe I'm misremembering some line of play that occurred there. But anyway, down comes a Progenitor Mimic. I'm paying for the Rhystic Study again. This may come down as a copy of the Hostage Taker so that they can exile something from us. Yep, it comes down as Hostage Taker, so let's see what happens here. See what they're targeting. Alright, now then, let's allow Kefnet to be exiled, and let's also allow Kefnet to go into our library. We have a Scroll Rack, so hopefully we can delve into that pretty quickly. But we're drawing into a Rite of Replication next turn, so I think it might be worth us kicking that and getting rid of all our opponent's stuff. And then getting down a lot of copies of Hostage Taker. An Adakar Valkyrie. I'm glad I got rid of the Lightning Greaves before. Tap when a target creature other than Adakar Valkyrie dies this turn. Return it to the battlefield under your control. That's a 4/5 flyer with Vigilance. And this time we draw into another card. Now we can get 5 copies of Hostage Taker down next turn if we get into that Rite of Replication. Actually, is it a Mystic Confluence we put second? Yes, it's a Mystic Confluence. So in that case, we can't go for that line of play at all. Oh yes, we can. We can go for the Scroll Rack, can't we? So let's go for that. We still have the mana held up. We'll get our commander back at the same time. Okay, Mortify is going on something. Oh, that's going on to the Nazal. Let's see what they get into with Rashmi. They reveal a Reflecting Pool, so that is of no concern to us. We draw a card with Nazal. That will be our commander, I think. Yep, we get into God Eternal Kefnet. And then they have 1 mana floating, which will probably pay for the Rhystic Study. Now then, we discard 3 cards to exile it and return it tapped. I think we just High Tide. That'll draw us another card, so that effectively cantrips itself. Which is good when we are after that Rite of Replication. So, as it turns out, we actually don't need to activate this Scroll Rack now, do we? We can go for that, and then we can Mystic Confluence now. Let me just make sure we've got enough for Rite of Replication first. Yes, we can Mystic Confluence to counter that as well as Rite of Replication, so let's do just that. We'll draw a couple of cards and counter that unless they pay 3. They don't have any mana held up now, so they won't be able to do that. And then the Scroll Rack will finally resolve. We'll just put... it doesn't really matter what we put on top. Let's just go for the Thran Dynamo and the Echoing Truth on top. And then we'll cast the Rite of Replication with the Kicker. And that will get us a lot of hostage takers. Exactly the right number of hostage takers to exile all of our opponent's creatures, which will clear the way for our Nizal to come through. And all we do there is turn everything sideways, and that is that. Really good game by our opponent. We didn't make the really optimal plays there. We could have countered the original Niv-Mizzet and then they wouldn't have gotten all those cards into hand. But I didn't really see much fun in that, so decided to play it round this way, and I'm very glad I did because this was a much more fun and interactive game. Our opponent got their mana right up there and started to be able to get a lot of things going, like Progenitor Mimic onto a hostage taker is really good. But unfortunately for them, we managed to get their life total down pretty far by that point. By the time they stabilised, we only needed to hit them once more with the Nizal and they were out, so managed to pull off a victory. Really fun game with God Eternal Kefnet versus Niv-Mizzet Reborn, and surely you all enjoyed that as well. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.